Today we are going to learn about another wastewater treatment technology, aerated lagoons. And along with that, we will also discuss about the design of secondary clarifier or secondary sedimentation tank for suspended growth secondary treatment processes. Aerated lagoon also is a suspended growth aerobic treatment process, and the purpose of this treatment process is the same like all other secondary treatment processes, that is to remove the organic matter, to remove the BOD from the wastewater. Now there are two major differences of aerated lagoon and activated sludge process. In activated sludge process, the sludge from the secondary clarifier, which was known as activated sludge, was recirculated back into the aeration tank. Whereas in aerated lagoon, there is no recirculation of sludge. So it means that the concentration of bacteria or microorganisms in aerated lagoon would be less as compared to the activated sludge process. So if bacteria are less, it means more time would be required to achieve the same removal of organic matter. More time means larger area or larger volume of the reactor would be required. So this is the major difference between a aerated lagoon and an activated sludge process. Rest, it's almost the same. It is preceded by a primary clarifier and followed by a secondary clarifier. Oxygen is supplied mostly by using the mechanical aerators, surface aerators. And one other major difference is that aerated lagoons are mostly the earthen basins. They are constructed within the soil, within the earth, whereas aeration tank of an activated sludge process is a concrete structure above ground. So as mentioned on the previous slide, that aerated lagoons are mostly the earthen basins. They are constructed within the earth, in which the wastewater is treated on a flow-through basis. So here is a typical view of a aerated basin constructed within the soil, within the earth. Two mechanical surface aerators are provided to supply the oxygen and to completely mix the contents of the reactor to make it a CSTR. This is a pictorial view of actual installation of aerated lagoons. So oxygen is supplied by means of surface or diffused aerators. Mostly surface aerators are used. In aerated lagoon, sludge recycling is not employed as stated earlier. And since sludge is the activated sludge which contains living organisms, bacteria, so if it is not recycled, it means the concentration of bacteria in the aerated lagoon would be far less as compared to the activated sludge process. So aerated lagoons operate at low MLSS concentration, and you should remember that MLSS concentration represents the concentration of bacteria in the aeration tank or aerated lagoon. So it is low MLSS concentration but long retention times, as the bacteria are less in numbers, so they require more time to oxidize organic matter. So long retention times are provided as compared to activated sludge process. There are two types of aerated lagoons. One is a partially mixed aerated lagoon, which is also known as facultative lagoon, and the other one is fully mixed or aerobic lagoon. In partially mixed facultative lagoon, aeration is done only to fulfill the oxygen requirements but not for maintaining the solids in suspension. Means the quantity of oxygen is fulfilled which is required, but the energy input, the mixing, is not sufficient to keep all the contents, the solids, in suspension. Therefore, some solids would settle and the settled sludge would decompose anaerobically. This is the pictorial view of an partially mixed or facultative pond or aerated lagoon, in which just one aerator is provided which supplies the oxygen which is required to oxidize organic matter, but it cannot completely mix the contents of the reactor to keep them in suspension. Therefore, some part of the solids settle down at the bottom, and this settled sludge would obviously decompose anaerobically because oxygen cannot penetrate to the bottom depths of this sludge. So that's why this aerated lagoon is called facultative. Facultative is that in which aerobic as well as anaerobic both processes are occurring at the same time. Whereas in fully mixed or aerobic aerated lagoon, energy input satisfies the BOD, the oxygen requirement, and keeps the contents of the basin in suspension. Just to represent, as compared to this, there are two mechanical aerators which are sufficient to provide oxygen required as well as to keep the contents in suspension. So there is no settlement, all the process occurs under aerobic condition. So these are known as aerobic aerated lagoons. So the process and design criteria includes the detention time first of all, which is the design basis for an aerated lagoon, and it is around 4 to 7 days. Some books state it as from 3 to 6 days. So common values are from 4 to 7 days. So you can compare this with the detention time of an activated sludge process, which was 4 to 8 hours. So it is many folds greater as compared to activated sludge detention time. And the reason for this long retention time is that sludge is not being recycled here in aerated lagoon. Therefore, the concentration of microorganisms is lesser in the aerated lagoon as compared to aeration tank of an ASP process. So that's why bacteria would require more time to oxidize the organic matter. More time means more volume or more surface area of the reactor would be required. The depth of the aerated lagoon is generally from 3 to 5 meters, and power input, it's just a rough estimation that 20 watt of power would be required per cubic meter of the volume of lagoon. The quality of the effluent from an aerated lagoon can be estimated by using the CSTR formula, considering it a completely mixed reactor, and since the oxidation of BOD follows the first order reaction, so first order CSTR equation can be used here. Previously you have studied this equation with respect to CE over CI equals 1 over 1 plus KT. So here it is represented with L. That doesn't matter whether you represent it with C or L. L denotes the concentration of BOD here. So effluent BOD, influent BOD, Li equals 1 over 1 plus KT. This is the same equation which you have studied in the reactor theory class or lecture for the first order CSTR equation. So this equation can be used to find out the effluent BOD from an aerated lagoon, which largely depends on the detention time, and K, which is the overall removal rate coefficient or reaction rate coefficient for BOD. The reported overall values of K varies from 0.5 to 1.5 per day, and removal rates for soluble BOD would be higher. Soluble BOD is quite easy to oxidize by bacteria, therefore its removal rate or K value would be higher. This is the reason why it was recommended technology for many of the industries which have soluble organic matter proportion as the major portion of BOD, such as food processing industries, dairy industries. They have major portion of organic matter as soluble BOD. So it is quite easy for that organic matter to be oxidized by bacteria. So removal rate would be higher. So better effluent can be attained using aerated lagoons for such industry. Since this K is temperature dependent, we have discussed that in the BOD topic, wastewater characteristics topic. So K depends on temperature, so therefore in an aerated lagoon process particularly, where influence of atmospheric temperature would be large because of the large surface area of the lagoon. So you have to estimate the effluent quality at different temperatures of winter and summer, because the efficiency and effluent quality will vary considerably uh, between these two seasons. Let's solve an example problem related to aerated lagoons. You have to calculate the required surface area and effluent BOD of a flow through aerated lagoon to treat a wastewater flow of 3800 cubic meters per day. Following conditions and requirements apply. Effluent BOD is 200 milligrams per liter. Removal rate K for soluble BOD is 2.5 per day at 20 degrees Celsius, and theta value to apply the temperature correction is 1.06. Design sludge retention time or mean cell residence time is 5 days. Now for a rated lagoon, sludge retention time and detention time both are same, because sludge is not being recirculated, as was the case in activated sludge process. In activated sludge, detention time is 4 to 8 hours, whereas mean cell residence time or sludge retention time is quite higher in days, because sludge is being recirculated again and again. So sludge spends more time, bacteria spends more time in the reactor as compared to the wastewater. But here in aerated lagoon, since no recirculation of sludge is applicable, therefore sludge retention time and the detention time are same. Lagoon depth is from 3 to 3.3 meters. Water temperature in summer and winter is 22 degrees Celsius and 16 degrees Celsius respectively. So at first we will determine the volume and surface area of the lagoon based on 5 days sludge retention time. So simply using the definition of discharge, discharge is volume per unit time. So volume would be discharge multiplied by time. So discharge is given, time is given, you can find out the volume. The surface area can be determined by dividing the volume with depth. So around 5,787 square meter surface area would be required for lagoon system. So you can also compare this area with the area of activated sludge process having just 4 to 8 hours detention times. It would be very large as compared to ASP area. And now the second part of the problem says that you have to calculate effluent BOD. So using the equation of first order CSTR, you can find out the effluent BOD. Detention time is known, effluent BOD is known, however K value has to be corrected for temperatures of winter and summer respectively. So first you will apply the temperature correction for K using this equation. This equation was discussed in the topic of BOD in wastewater characteristics, where the value of this theta was taken as 1.047. So commonly for BOD it's 1.047. However, it may vary from process to process slightly. So for activated sludge process, for ambient treatment conditions, theta value given in the statement is 1.06. So we will use that value. KT here is temperature, K value at any temperature, and K20 is K value at the 20 degrees Celsius, which is given in statement. So in summers, temperature is 22 degrees Celsius, so K22 would be 2.5, which was the K at 20, 1.06 raised to the power 22 minus 20. So it gives the answer of 2.8 per day. So in summer, reaction rate coefficient would be slightly higher as compared to what was at 20 degrees Celsius. Whereas in winter, temperature is lesser. So again, by solving this equation, 16 minus 20, you get the answer of 1.98. So removal rate coefficient of BOD would be slightly lesser as compared to what was at 20 degrees Celsius. Now using these two K values, you can determine the effluent quality for winter and summer through this formula. So for summer, influent BOD is same 200 milligrams per liter, 2.8 is K value and 5 is the retention time of the lagoon. So effluent would contain 13.3 milligrams per liter of BOD. In winters, at 16 degrees Celsius, K value is 1.98, rest of the things are same. So effluent BOD value would be 18.3 milligrams per liter. So in summer and winter, there would be a little different effluent BOD. But in both the cases, you can see that with 5 days retention time, a significant reduction of effluent BOD can be obtained using the aerated lagoon process. Some advantages of aerated lagoons include that they require less area as compared to waste stabilization ponds. This is a natural treatment technology in which no sludge recycling occurs and no oxygen is supplied. So obviously larger area would be required for such natural treatment process. So area required for aerated lagoons is lesser than waste stabilization ponds. We are going to talk about WSPs in the next lectures. The second advantage is that they require low capital cost as compared to activated sludge process, and also the low operation cost because no recycling of the sludge is involved, so that cost is saved. It is easy to operate and maintain as compared to activated sludge, and a good treatment option for a wide range of industries, for example dairy and fruits. However, there are certain limitations or disadvantages as well. The first is that in facultative lagoons, sludge handling is an issue because if you want to remove the sludge from facultative pond, you have to shut down the plant first. And it cannot be used where space is very limited, as we have discussed many times that very large area is required as compared to activated sludge process. So its application in urban settlements is very limited or difficult. Now we are going to talk about the secondary clarifier design for suspended growth processes, because it is a bit different for attached growth processes, but since generally suspended growth processes are used like activated sludge, aerated lagoon, so for secondary clarifier design with respect to these suspended growth processes is under discussion in this topic. The design of secondary clarifier is critically important to the operation of a suspended growth process, because if secondary clarifier is not designed and doesn't operate as required, the settlement of the sludge would not be very effective or possible. And if sludge is not settled in secondary clarifier, the biomass is not settled, it will be leaving the reactor with the effluent, so it will be contributing towards the effluent BOD because the biomass is organic matter, it's BOD. So it has to be removed very efficiently in a secondary clarifier. So it is based on its design and operation obviously. So design basis for a secondary clarifier is not similar to the design basis for a primary clarifier. In primary clarifier, since the discrete particle settling or flocculant particle settling is encountered, so design of primary clarifier is a bit different, whereas in secondary clarifier, hindered settling, type 3 settling of particles is encountered or occurs, therefore its design basis is different. The design basis for secondary clarifier is solids loading rate. Solids loading means how much amount of sludge or how much amount of solids, basically biomass in solids form, are being applied to the surface area of a secondary clarifier. So hindered settling, a type 3 settling is likely to occur, and the settling velocity of discrete particles may not govern the design basis. This was the design criteria for or design basis for primary clarifier. If you recall, we designed the primary clarifier on the basis of discrete particle settling velocity of the particles. But here in secondary clarifier, since hindered settling is likely to occur, Therefore, this should not be used as a design criteria. What is to be used is solids loading rate. Solids loading rate is expressed in terms of kilograms of solids applied to the unit area of a secondary clarifier per unit time. So kilograms of solids per hour per square meter of the secondary clarifier area. And mathematically it can be expressed as MLSS multiplied by the total discharge. This is how you get the mass of the solids or mass of any uh, concentration, as you were doing this for BOD in some previous lectures, that you multiply the concentration with the discharge and you get the mass loading rate. Similarly here, since we are interested to know the amount of solids applied, and solids are the MLSS, mixed liquor suspended solids, we will multiply it with the discharge, and discharge is the total discharge including the recirculated water. As in activated sludge process, sludge is recycled from the secondary clarifier back into the aeration tank, so that recirculated discharge is also to be added here. So solids concentration multiplied by total discharge will give you mass per unit time. And if you divide it with the area of the secondary clarifier, will give you the solids loading rate. So typical solid loading rate vary from 2.5 to 6.2 kilograms per square meter per hour at average and peak loading conditions respectively. So whether you use average loading condition or peak loading conditions, you can select the appropriate value from this typical design criteria. Now, although SOR, surface overflow rate, is not the design parameter for secondary clarifier, but still it has to be checked and it should not exceed 57 meters per day. While in primary sedimentation tanks or primary clarifiers, the design basis was SOR. They are designed on the basis of SOR, and normally SORs are in range of 20 to 40 meters per day. Here for secondary clarifier, this is not the primary design value or factor. However, it should not exceed the value of 57 meters per day. Another important consideration is the weir loading rate, which was also very important for primary sedimentation tank design. So it is the same value, that it should not exceed 250 square meter per day. I hope you remember how to calculate the weir loading rate. So in this example problem, you are supposed to design a secondary clarifier for an activated sludge process with a recycle rate of 30%. It means that 30% of the actual amount of flow is recycled from the secondary clarifier back into the aeration tank. An MLSS concentration of 3000 milligrams per liter. This is concentration of mixed liquor suspended solids in aeration tank. Peak wastewater flow of 10,000 cubic meters a day, and the basin is to be circular and the weir is along the wall. For circular sedimentation tanks, you know the weir is along the walls, whereas for rectangular sedimentation tanks, weir is along the effluent end of the tank along the width. Now for the solution of this example problem, the first step is to select an appropriate value of solids loading rate, which is the design basis for secondary clarifier, and it was given as 6.2 kilograms per square meter per hour for peak loading rate. So since we are provided with the peak sewage flow, so we will use this value. Solids loading rate formula is MLSS multiplied by total discharge divided by area of the clarifier. So area of clarifier can be determined from here. So on left hand side of the equation, you plug in the value of solids loading rate selected based on the peak loading condition, 6.2 kilograms per square meter per hour. Now here MLSS concentration is 3000 milligrams per liter, which is equivalent to grams per cubic meter. Now since we want to convert it into kilograms, as on left hand side we have kilograms per hour. So you convert it or you divide it with 1000 or multiplied with 10 raised to the power minus 3 kilograms per gram. And then you are provided with the discharge value, which is 10 raised to the power 4, the actual discharge, peak discharge, plus 0.3 into 10 raised to the power 4. This is 30% of this flow which is recycled. So QR is 0.3 into 10 raised to the power 4. So here the units are cubic meters per day, whereas on left hand side you have the units of per hour. So to convert this cubic meters per day to cubic meters per hour, you further divide it with 24. So from this, the area of the clarifier after solving this comes out to be 262 square meters, and you can find the diameter from this 9.125 meter, and perimeter of this circular sedimentation tank would be 57.4 meters. Now you are able to determine the value of weir loading rate, which is discharge over weir length. So weir length for circular tank is the perimeter, the whole of the perimeter. So we divide it and get the value of 174 meters per day, which is less than the maximum permissible limit, which is 250 meters per day. So this is how you design a secondary clarifier for a suspended growth process. This is a bit different, as I said earlier, from the design of primary sedimentation tanks, because in primary sedimentation tanks the design is on the basis of surface overflow rate, whereas in secondary clarifiers it is based on solids loading rate. Thanks for listening. This is all for this topic of aerated lagoons and secondary clarifier design for suspended growth processes. Please listen to the lecture and note down your questions. I would be happy to address those questions in the QA section.